Hello, Honors Algebra. This is Mr. Lawrence once again. This is your review lesson because we do have a very, very important test on Tuesday, right before we go on break. So we are going to cover a lot of different topics. I will give you some sample problems and things like that. So let's get started. The first thing that we studied in Chapter 5, if you remember, was domain, range, and functions. Functions. We'll start with domain. The definition of domain, see if you can answer it on your own. The definition for domain are the x values, right? They're the x values. The definition of range are the y values. And they're actually the values, folks. They're not the letters x and y. They're the values of the x coordinate or y coordinate or whatever the case may be. We'll talk about functions in a minute. Let me give you two sample problems and see if you can identify the domain and range. Okay, here we have problems A and B. First, I'll start with the domain. I know that the domain of problem A is the number 1. I don't repeat the number 1 over and over and over again. Okay, I just list it once. That's the domain. The range. The range of problem A is 2, 3, and 4. Okay, those are the y values. I do have to list them all individually because they each show up one time. Now the question, is this a function? Is it a function? I'm going to write the word function over here. That doesn't mean it's a function. But what I notice is that the x value 1 is going different places. That means it is not a function. It is not a function because for each x is going to more than one y. Each x value can only go to one specific place. Okay, the fact that 1 is going to 2, 1 is going to 3, and 1 is also going with 4 means it is not a function. By the way, if you graph the points 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4, you would get a vertical line. Now in Algebra 2, you will study something called the vertical line test. If you could take a vertical line and place it on a graph, like I graphed those 3 points, if the vertical line hits the graph, the picture, the points, in more than one place, it is not a function. And these 3 points would all be on the same vertical line. So the vertical line would hit it, boom, it would fail. So problem A is not a function. All right, let's drop down to the domain and range of problem B. Let me start with my domain. My domain in this case would be 5, 6, and 7. My range for this case would be 9. And again, I don't list it every single time. I don't repeat myself. I repeat myself all the time, but not when I'm doing domain and range. Okay, so by the way, this lesson, I hope it has lots of pizzas. That way James Bollinger won't criticize me on misspeaking on my jokes. Anyway, driving on parkways, parking on driveways, etc. Anyway, so there's my domain, there's my range. Is this a function? I'm going to write the word function, and I'm going to determine. Where does 5 go? 5 only goes to 9. Doesn't go anywhere else. That's a good thing. The x value is only going to one y value. Is 6. 6, where is it going? It is only going to 9. 6 is not going anyplace else. That's another good thing. 7 is only going to 9. Very good thing. This is a function. Yay, we found a function. Now, using that idea of the vertical line test, if I plotted these points, 5, 9, 6, 9, 7, 9, on a graph paper, and if you need to do that, go ahead and plot them and test it. And then take your pencil or your finger or a ruler and use it as a vertical line and move it along the paper. If it hits any 2 or 3 of those points at the same time, then we wouldn't have a function. But these 3 points are in a horizontal line. So if I run a vertical line along them, it will only hit one point at one given time. So therefore, this is a function. All right, so that's a brief review of domain, range, and function. Now remember, there are extra problems in the back of your textbook, the blue section. I believe it's 5.1, but you want to look in the blue section in the very back. All right, let's move on to our next topic. Hold on one moment. The first way we learned about counting slope is we learned about the rise and the run. Remember that? Rise over run. Rise refers to the y's, the change in y, and that goes on top of the change in x's. The rise is your vertical movement, the y's rise to the top, the run is your horizontal movement, okay? All right, the x's run along the bottom, y's rise to the top, and x's run along the bottom. Now, to count slope on a graph, I'm going to do the red line first. I'm going to plot 2 points that I absolutely know the coordinates of. Any 2 points will work. If I pick 2 points that are farther apart, I'll get a fraction that'll need to be simplified in many cases. If I pick points that are closer together, I may not have to simplify. But any 2 points that I know the exact coordinates of will work. It looks like I'll call this point A and this point B. I think they're hitting the intersections right there and there, so I'll do my rise. 1, 2, 3. My rise is -3. My run is +1. So therefore, the slope of the red line is -3/1. Now please note, it's a negative slope. It's going down to the right. To me, it looks like it's going downhill because I read left to right. Okay, let's jump over to the yellow line. The yellow line, I'll find 2 points that I know the coordinates of. It looks like that. I'll call that point C. And I'll go a little further this time. I'll go up here and call it point D. Okay, oops, it looks like a P, doesn't it? All right, well, there's a D. I will rise 1, 2, 3, and I will run 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the slope of the yellow line, I'll change that to yellow in a minute, is 3/6, which simplifies to 1/2. And notice it's a positive slope, isn't it? Yeah, and it's going up to the right. To me, it looks like it's going uphill. And there you go. There's your yellow one in case you're following along at home. All right, I'm going to do the black line now. I'll do its points in different colors. The black line, a bit easier. All right, I'm going to call this point F and point G. And I'll move from F to G, and I'll rise 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So my rise is 6. I don't run any. My run is 0. So the black line, the slope of the black line is 6/0. I am not going to waste my time simplifying that. That is not a number. I know that I'm never allowed to divide by 0. And remember, on a test, if you can't remember, or even if you're not 100% sure, punch it in a calculator. If you type in 0 divided by 6 on your calculator, you will get an error message. That's telling you that there is no slope. Of course, you could tell me that the slope is undefined. They are acceptable synonyms in this case. You can tell me either one. You don't have to tell me both. You can tell me no slope, or you can tell me undefined. And again, you're allowed to use a calculator. Use it to double check your work. I don't want you relying on your calculator. You're too smart for that. Your brains are too developed. But you need to check your work with a calculator. That's what a smart person does. Okay, moving right along. Let's go over here onto the blue line, and I'll call that point X, and I'll call that point Y, and I'll count my rise and run. I'll move from Y to X this time. Well, let's see here. I'm going to rise 0, and I'm going to run 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's -5. So the slope of the blue line, is going to be 0/-5. Now the best answer here is 0 slope. Now, because I told you I don't mind slope as a fraction because it helps us remember to graph right, I won't take off if you give me 0/-5, but you'll probably see me write on your paper equals 0. I want you to start moving away from some security blankets, knowing that 0 divided by -5 equals 0. And again, you are allowed to use your calculator. All right, so that's counting slope, but let's move on By the way, I warned you this would be a long video because it is review. Don't feel like you have to watch it all at one time. All right, let's figure out how to calculate slope now. Let's say I have these 2 points, the point 10.8 and the point 6.9. I'm going to calculate my slope. Well, if one formula you should have memorized is that slope can be found by taking the difference of the y's, they rise to the top, remember, and the difference of the x's. All right, now some of us make silly little mistakes sometimes, so I advise you to write x1, y1, x2, y2 above the points. Now all you have to do is plug the points into the formula. Plug the coordinates into the formula. Now remember, it doesn't matter which point you called the first point or the second point, as long as you're consistent. If the 10 is x1, then the y has to be 8.1. If the 10 is x2, then the y has to be 8.2. Y2. All right, so I'm going to take 9, and I'm going to subtract 8 from it. I'm going to take 6, and then subtract 10 from it. When I do that, I'm going to get -1 over -4, but then I need to simplify. A negative divided by a negative is going to be a positive. My slope is 1/4. Now, some of you make some mistakes when we have some extra negatives involved, so let's look at 1 or 2 of those. Okay, let's say I have the point -3, 5, -6, -7. I'll tell you what, instead of me telling you how to do it, why don't you go ahead and pause the video. You'll see my work show up when you unpause it, and then you'll know if you did it right. Now, please pay attention to my work if you don't get the same answer that I do. Okay, so there are my answers. Now, I did the problem twice, once in black, once in blue, depending on which point you wanted to be first. Please notice that I have 5 minus -7. Minus a negative is the same as plus a positive. So 5 plus 7 is 12. That happens in my denominator on the black one as well. -3 minus -6 minus a negative is plus a positive. So -3 plus 6 is +3. 12 over 3 is the same as 4 over 1. That's an acceptable answer for slope. Or you could have just told me 4, which is the simplest form. But remember, because we're doing slope, the fraction is okay. This is okay as well. All right, in the blue one, I did -7 minus 5. Notice it's not minus a negative. It's -7 minus 5. So in that case, I get -12. If I owed $7 and I owed $5 more, I would owe $12. In the denominator, I have -6 minus -3. Minus a negative is plus a positive. -6 plus 3 is -3. -12 divided by -3 is +4 over 1, or 4. Either one of these is a good answer. You don't have to give both. You should only give one. If you want to stay with the fraction, that's okay. Now again, if you want more practice, there are extra problems in the back of your textbook. All right, moving right along. Okay, next we're going to talk about the 3 forms of linear equations that we know. We know slope y-intercept form, which you need to have this formula memorized. It is y equals mx plus b. B is the y-intercept, and the slope is m. All right, so if I have this equation, y equals 3x plus 1/2, to graph it, a little sketch graph for you, x, y. Let me change colors. I would go to 1/2. Oh, hold on one second. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so I would go to 1/2. The y-intercept of 1/2. Remember, I tricked you a couple days ago. I put a fraction in there. You all said, oh, it must be the slope. No, no, the slope is the coefficient on x. Did you hear me, Zach? And Zach, the slope is the coefficient on x. I start with the y-intercept. It's 0, 1/2. So I plot that point first. Then I rise and run from that point. So in this case, I would go up 1, 2, 3, and I go over 1. My new point is there. I could go down from that point, 1, 2, 3, and over -1. And I would get my line. Please pardon me, it is not perfectly straight, but I can't use a ruler on the smartboard. All right, that is slope y-intercept form. Point slope form, some of you run away from, but I think you're getting over your fear of it. Remember, it's y minus y sub 1, and that equals m times the quantity of x minus x sub 1. right? And in point slope form, m is my slope, and the point is x1, y1. But you got to remember to do something to x1 and y1. What do you got to do? What's that? I know Heather just said it. She shouted out, change the sign. Yes, you are correct, Heather. Nice job. Okay, so if I have an equation written like this, y minus 5 equals 2/3 times the quantity of x plus 4, okay, I know that my point is negative 4, 5. And I know my slope is 2/3. Notice I looked here for the x value and the sign change. I looked here for the y value, and again, the sign changes. Okay, now I'm not actually going to plot that one right now, but you can go ahead and feel free to do that. I'm trying to keep this video a normal length. All right, standard form, ax plus by equals c. Remember, the lead coefficient must be positive. Must be positive. All right, when we're in this form, some cool things happen. Remember, the x-intercept can be found by dividing c by a. The y-intercept can be found by dividing c by b. And the slope can be found by doing the negative of a divided by b. Makes it a very useful form. Very useful. Let me get a little bit more room here. And we'll take a look at an equation like this. Let's say I have negative 5x plus 4y equals 20. First of all, I ask myself, am I in standard form? Some of you are going to say yes, but I'm going to fool you. Did I fool you, Lauren? Did I? I bet I didn't fool Andrew. Oh, okay. A is not positive, so I need to change a to a positive. I don't want the 5 to change its value. I want the sign to change. So I'm either going to multiply or divide by a negative 1. Multiply or divide. So if I multiply 5 by negative 1, it becomes positive. But I have to multiply 4 by negative 1. It becomes a negative. I have to multiply the 20 by negative 1. It becomes a negative. So the standard form is actually 5x minus 4y, and that equals negative 20. Now, knowing that, I can list A as 5, B as negative 4, and C as negative 20. Hold on one moment here. Okay, sorry about that. I had to expel some phlegm from my throat. Lovely. Don't picture that. All right, don't visualize, that is. That's it, Ashley, you visualized, didn't you? Oh man, now you're going to go tell my parents I'm the gross one, and you're the one thinking about it. Yuck. All right, to get the slope, I know my slope is going to be negative 5 over negative 4, but a better answer would be 5 over 4. Remember, with slope, I never go mixed number. It's so much harder to do it that way. To get the x-intercept, I will do c divided by a. Well, c is negative 20, a is 5, therefore the x-intercept occurs at negative 4. And remember, that's negative 4, 0, because it's got to be on the x-axis to be an x-intercept. The y-intercept is going to be c, negative 20, divided by negative 4, which is going to be 5. And remember, that's on the y-axis, so that is the point 0, 5. I do not combine the negative 4 and the 5 into some kind of point. If I do that, I'm not on either axis, and therefore I don't have either intercept. Okay, that's that in a nutshell. I think I'm not going to talk about the graphing. You'll get a chance. You've had plenty of chance to practice graphing. I will let you do that maybe in Monday in class. The last thing I need to talk about, because this video is getting so long, thank goodness YouTube doesn't make me split them anymore. The last thing I'm going to talk about is parallel and perpendicular lines. And I'm going to remember that with parallel lines, slopes are equal. But with perpendicular lines, the slopes are negative. reciprocals. Okay, so how am I going to use that? Now, by the way, we did some equation writing, and I haven't talked about that yet. I'm going to do it in this section here, and I'll do it a couple different ways. All right, let's say I give you an equation like 5x plus 2y, and we'll make that equal to 10. All right, and I want to know the equation parallel. So I'll do my parallel over here. Parallel. And I want to know the equation of a line that's perpendicular to it. Perpendicular. Okay. But I have to put a stipulation on here. These are both going to go through the point 10, 3. Okay, so do the parallel one to get the parallel line. Well, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to identify the slope of the original equation. The original equation slope would be -5/2. How to get those so fast? I just did -a over b. That means my parallel line has a slope of -5/2 because the slopes are the same. They have to be, otherwise the lines would end up crossing. I also know that the parallel line must go through the point 10, 3. How do I know that? Because that is the problem. It says that. Okay, so to write my equation, I'm going to do it two different ways. I'll start off, first of all, in point slope form. I will take y minus 3 equals -5/2 times the quantity of x minus 10. There is the point slope form of the line that is parallel to the original line, and it goes through the point 10, 3. Now, I'm going to convert this to slope y-intercept form. I will get y minus 3 equals -5/2x, and I will get positive. Let's see, 2 is going to go into 10 5 times. That'll be 25. Okay, and then y is going to equal -5/2x. I have to add 3 to both sides. It'll be plus 28. I'm not going to graph it because I don't want to deal with a y-intercept of 28. On the test, I will require you to, but I promise I won't give you something like a y-intercept of 28. It'll come out prettier than that. All right, let me try it doing it the other way. Some of you like to go y equals mx plus b, and this is another very good way to do it. You just have to pay attention if the directions allow you the freedom to do it the way you want, or if they specify you have to use point slope form or slope y-intercept form. Okay, well, in this case, I know y is 3. I know m is, what is that, -5/2? -5/2. And I also know that x is 10/1. I add b. I'm going to simplify this equation, solve for b, and then I'll write my equation in slope y-intercept form. So I'll get 3 equals, let's see, 2 goes into 10 5 times. That'll be -25 plus a b. I'll add 25 each side. B will equal 28. Now that I know my slope, -5/2, and my y-intercept, 28, I will write y equals -5/2x plus 28. And there is my equation. And notice I get the same thing in both problems. I have to, because they're just two ways to skin the cat. Oh, the poor kitty. Meow. Sorry. Okay, hold on one second. This time I'm going to do the equation that's perpendicular to the original equation. Well, I know the original slope was -5/2. That means my perpendicular slope is going to equal 2/5. I'm still going through the point 10, 3. Why? Because I have to. I have to have a point that it goes through. I can't just make one up. All right. So I'll do it again in point slope form. Y minus 3 equals 2/5 times 10. No, that's a mistake. It should be times x. Minus 10, right? Okay, so then y minus 3 is going to equal 2/5 x minus 5 goes into 10 twice. 2 times 2 is 4. I'll add 3 to each side, so y will end up equaling 2/5 x minus 1. And there's the equation in slope y-intercept form. By the way, that 10 looks like it's looking at you. That's just a random mark. I apologize. To try it using the y equals mx plus b method, y equals mx plus b. Remember, you need to know all three forms. You can't just say, well, I'm going to do it one way. You don't know which way the test is going to ask you, so you need to be able to do it all ways. If you weren't in honors, I wouldn't require all three ways, but you are. You're smart enough. You belong here. Let's do it all three ways. Why? Because we can. All right, I'm going to plug in the y, which is 3. I'm going to plug in the slope, which is 2/5. I'm going to plug in the x-coordinate, which is 10, and I'll write it as a fraction because my slope is a fraction, and I'll put a plus b. 3 will equal, 5 will go into 10 two times. 2 times 2 is 4, plus b. I'll subtract 4 from each side, and b will end up equaling -1. Now that I know the slope, 2/5, and the y-intercept, b, -1, I will write y equals 2/5 x minus 1. Remember, my final equations have to have the variables y and x in them. Otherwise, I get an infinitely true statement, which does not help me. All right, I think that's long enough for a review lesson. I'm very proud of you guys. Your last scores were really, really high. Let's keep it. Let's see even higher. Some of you are making silly mistakes transposing x and y. Let's stop making those silly mistakes and let's shoot for the lowest score of a C+. You guys are so smart and these flipped lessons are working so well. I believe that you can do it. Let's shoot for a low score of C+. Let's just blow this test out of the water. All right, guys. Hope you have a good weekend. Feel free to watch this more than once. On Monday, we'll do some review, some practice kind of stuff, and get ready for Tuesday. And then we'll go have some turkey. Oh, by the way, you're going to have a sub on Tuesday, a very special sub who only shows up once a year. Make sure you wear your scarlet and gray and your Buckeye necklaces and all that kind of stuff. All right. It'll be a fun day, even though we are taking a test. Okay. Very good. This is Mr. Lawrence signing